I'm Cheryl Johnson, and this is Basic Baking 101. Today I'm going to instruct you on how to bake Christmas tree cookies. These are buttery and delicious and cute. First, you need to round up your ingredients, so pause your video here. This is the recipe for your basic uniced cookie. So we start with 1.5 pounds of butter, which would be 3 cups. This recipe has a lot of butter because it's a basic shortbread recipe. So cube up the butter into the mixing bowl so that it will incorporate more easily with the sugar that you're going to add. 2 cups of granulated sugar go in with the butter, and then either by hand or with a mixer, you cream the butter and the sugar together. Make it somewhat fluffy at the end. That way you're sure that all the sugar has incorporated with the butter and has started to somewhat dissolve. Once you see it looking fluffy like this, then you can stop the mixer and add your eggs. 3 eggs go into the cookie dough. Once your eggs are in, then you can start the mixer and incorporate the eggs into the butter and the sugar mixture. We do this separately because the fat of the eggs needs the sugar and the butter in order to mix really well with it. 1 tablespoon of vanilla goes into the cookie dough along with some almond extract, 1 tablespoon. This has to be real vanilla and real almond extract, not the artificial kind. Once it's mixed up pretty well, you want to scrape the bowl. You should stop the mixer and not try this at home. Scrape the bottom and the sides of the bowl so to make sure that all the good flavoring gets throughout the cookie dough. Now in goes the flour. We have 7.5 cups of flour, regular all-purpose. Then 2 teaspoons of salt go into the flour, and you want to stick the spoon in there and mix it up a little bit to kind of fluff it in with the flour so that you don't get any clumps of salt into your cookie when you eat it. Then add the flour, about half of it, until you see the dough starting to gather itself up a little bit, and then you can go ahead and add the rest of the flour to the cookie mixture. It's going to look a little crumbly at this point. Don't worry, it's going to mix up into a nice big creamy ball in short order. Once all the flour is in the dough, you go ahead and make sure it's thoroughly mixed because you want all of your ingredients to be evenly dispersed. You can go ahead and scrape it and make sure that you got any raw flour that's sitting at the bottom and mix it a little bit more. Just make sure that your cookie dough is really mixed. At this point you want to put it on some cellophane and form it into a ball and try to get some of the cracks out and make sort of like a big patty, because this is the shape that it's going to be when you roll it. This is a pre-shaping of the dough. We want to shape it on the cellophane so that we can eventually cover it up and stick it in the refrigerator for about a half an hour so that it's not too soft to work with. This will firm it up just a little bit and keep it from being too sticky when you work with it. Put down some flour on a smooth surface and make sure that there's plenty of flour underneath because it's going to roll out fairly large, so you want to make sure and have enough flour when you're doing your rolling process. Go ahead and put some flour on the top once you've patted it out some, and make really sure that there's some good flour underneath, that you didn't use up all the flour while you were patting it. Now you get your rolling pin and we're going to start to roll the dough. Even is the key. You want to start from the center and work your way out. You want to make sure there's no high spots or low spots, and that it is going to roll to about 1/4 of an inch thick. And you don't want to have your dough higher than your cookie cutter, so make sure that the dough isn't too high in one place and too low in another. A quick check to make sure your dough is even, and it's time to spray the pan with a little vegetable shortening or rub some butter on it. And you take your cookie cutter, and so the dough doesn't stick to the inside, you want to pat it first in a little bit of flour before you start cutting. Once you cut, you can slap it out into your hand to get a nice even cookie, which you place on your greased baking pan, and make sure they're about a half an inch apart because they're going to spread a little bit when they bake and you don't want them to lose their nice shape. Cinnamon Imperials or Red Hots go on the top for the star. You can use little silver balls if you want to, but I kind of like the color of the red. Once the cinnamon Red Hots are all in place, it's time to bake them in a preheated 350-degree oven for 12 to 15 minutes. You want to make sure that they're a little bit brown on the ends, just a little bit. The brown should just be starting to show before you take them out of the oven. They're done, they're perfect, they're buttery, and they will be a nice crisp cookie. The cookies need to cool thoroughly before we place the rest of the icing and decorations on the top. To make the icing, you need a pound of powdered sugar, a half a teaspoon of vanilla, and an eighth of a cup of regular water. This will make a nice icing glaze that will adhere the rest of the decorations to the cookie. You want it to be a little bit drizzly like this, and you should let it sit for about 10 minutes or so to really develop the consistency of it. Take a pastry bag and a pastry tube and couple it with your tip and put it on the pastry bag. You can also use a cutout sandwich bag if you just cut the corner very tiny when you put your icing in. You don't really need a pastry bag, but make sure the tip's on really good so that it doesn't come off when you're trying to use it. Wrap the bag around your hand and then open your hand to make an opening for the icing to go into. And now we're going to feed the baby. This is just like feeding baby food to a baby. Scoop up the icing and put it into the bag. Once you have a good amount to work with, you don't want to fill it too full because it'll be awkward. Then you just sort of gather it up. Baby likes icing. And make sure that the tip, which is going to be a little drippy, is turned upwards. Otherwise, you're going to have an icing mess dripping all over the place. So keep the tip up when you're not using it, and get your sugar ready. Take some green sprinkles and put it on a plate, and then shake the plate to disperse the sugar a little bit more evenly. This is where the tricky part comes. You make swags of icing across the cookie and then dip it lightly into the sugar. After you shake the sugar off just a little bit, and then put the cookie on a pan to harden while you get ready for the next phase. These are nonpareils, or sprinkles as they're known, and you shake them out to evenly disperse them, and go ahead and take your cookie that's been dried a little bit and make some more swags on the portions that didn't have any before, and you dip them into the balls and you have a nice Christmas cookie. Once again, a swag at different angles, up and down the cookie, lightly dipped in sugar. You can do this one right after the other. You don't have to let it harden if you're in a hurry. Go ahead and put the swags, try to miss the parts that you already did, and there you have a lovely buttery Christmas cookie. Let them air dry overnight before you package them up. You can freeze these and get them out later and ice them if you want to make them ahead. These are cute and delicious. Everybody likes a good Christmas cookie. These cookies are great for gift giving or munching with some hot cider by the fire on a cold night. Thanks for joining me. I'm Cheryl Johnson. Happy baking!